Sharp Home Appliances, Saatchi Fine Leather from Italy, Braun Flex Control Shaver, Akai VCR, Eastern Express, and National Panasonic Electrical Appliances.
Introducing the ultimate program from American Express, Membership Miles. Every time you spend on the card, you earn points that let you fly for free. The faster you enroll, the faster you start earning points. Fly for free with Membership Miles, only from American Express.
The Sharp's second-generation 8-head VCR. With the unique 8-head system for superfine images. And a built-in FM tuner that brings you true-to-life Star TV stereo sound. The VC H100 from Sharp. Sharp idea, sharp product.
If all cars serviced by us over the years were lined up, that line would be longer than the Great Wall. We are Da Chong Hong Motor Service Center Limited, with premises that cover a total of 2 million square feet and a number of joint venture motor service centers in China, providing the highest level of services for vehicles represented by the Da Chong Hong Motor Group. At Da Chong Hong Motor Service Center, you're always first with the best of our service.
We went out to test the revolutionary Braun Flex Control Shaver.
Good morning, sir. Can you tell us if you had a shave this morning?
I did, yes, first thing this morning.
Oh, I've got here in my hand the new Braun Flex Control Shaver.
Can I try it?
Yes, please do.
Still plenty more coming off.
The unique pivoting head follows the contours of your face for an incredibly close shave.
It's extremely close. Very smooth, yeah, very good.
See what your shaver missed this morning.
No. I think that's the one.
That's great.
The world's first pivoting head twin foil shaver from Braun.
Good evening. Tonight we take a look back at the people and events that shaped Hong Kong in the past 12 months.
On New Year's Eve, it should be with joy that we say goodbye to 1993 and welcome 94. But for Hong Kong, tonight marks a sad anniversary.
One can't help but forget the tragic scenes that happened 1 year ago, when a night of celebration turned terribly wrong. 20,000 people had crowded into the trendy nightclub district of Lan Kwai Fong to herald in the new year. But within minutes of midnight, celebration turned into tragedy. "20 people died before help reached them. A young boy later died in hospital. The tragedy sparked a serious review of crowd control measures, and New Year's will never again be the same in Hong Kong.
For the superstitious, the Lan Kwai Fong incident was an omen. And for those watching political developments, you could say they were right.
Sino-British cooperation has broken down. There is no consensus on arrangements for the last elections to take place under British rule.
China is saying the political structure in place on the 30th of June 1997 will have to be dismantled. Hong Kong's political future remains uncertain.
中国政府重申，在中英双方未达成协议的情况下，对香港立法局讨论通过的有关94、95年选举的任何立法，中方都不予接受。据此产生的任何机构都不能过渡到1997年6月30日之后。
We've had a message from the Foreign Ministry in Peking referring us to what the spokesman of the Foreign Ministry said the other day, but I think we want a formal response to our proposal for talks.
It all started in October 1992. Governor Chris Patten proposed a package of electoral reforms for the territory that would abolish appointments to district and municipal bodies, widen the franchise in functional constituencies to give 2.7 million workers a second vote, and have the election committee made up of directly elected district board members.
All the proposals that I have outlined would, I believe, be compatible with the provisions of the Basic Law.
He had a hard time convincing Chinese officials who accused Patten of violating the Basic Law, the joint declaration, and other agreements made previously between the two sides. There were months of acrimonious exchanges. Sino-British relations reached an all-time low. Patten stoked the fire by publishing his reform package in the Government Gazette, but he held off tabling the bill for discussion in Legco. The war of words between the two sides intensified, but the move actually brought them to the negotiating table.
April 22nd, talks on electoral arrangements for Hong Kong began in Beijing. The Chinese side was represented by Vice Foreign Minister Zhang Anzhu. Negotiating for London, the British ambassador to China, Sir Robin McLaren. The talks weren't expected to be easy, but neither were they expected to drag on for so long with no inkling of progress. The sticking issues, a through train for legislators and the makeup of functional constituencies.
Yesterday, members, my colleagues, followed the advice of Mr. Chen Ziying and climbed to the top of the Great Wall. So they're all very fit and ready to go.
大使刚才说了，他是在爬长城，昨天爬在前面。我们希望我们双方都不断地往上爬，最后取得积极的成果。
The British Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd visited Beijing in July. But a meeting with his Chinese counterpart Chen Chi-chen did little to push forward the process.
There is a substantial gap, but I don't want to, again, talk about how far it has been narrowed. I don't think that would be useful.
There was no deadline for the talks, and neither side wanted to set one, but time was running out. As the talks dragged on through the summer and into the fall, the pressure was on for more decisive action.
But we now have only weeks rather than months to conclude these talks.
我们的会谈正处在十字路口，面临着谈得成与谈不成两种前途。
I agree that we stand at a crossroads in our discussions, and that the question at issue is whether we can make a success of these talks or not.
如果达不成协议，这也没什么了不起。在这种情况下，就1994、95选举出来的机构，就到1997年6月30号为止，不能过渡到这个以后。
I quote his words, no big deal, no big deal, if we didn't reach an agreement in these talks. Well, I want to part company from Mr. Zhang Anzhu. I think it would be a big deal if we didn't reach an agreement in the talks.
There were fears Patten would call off the talks. Instead, he conceded to the idea of dealing with the simpler issues first in an interim agreement.
Negotiators went back to the bargaining table with renewed vigor. In round 15, hopes were raised that an agreement was close at hand. A memorandum had been drawn up and was about to be signed. But then things started to go wrong. First, the British negotiator was sidelined by health problems. He was replaced by British Assistant Under-Secretary of State Christopher Hum. The talks went on for 2 more rounds, but it soon became apparent the thaw had frozen over again. Chris Patten decided to table partial reforms in Legco.
We have all, the Foreign Secretary, the Executive Council and I, reluctantly concluded that we now have no choice but to begin the process of legislating on the simpler issues, not least if we are to give ourselves more time to talk with China about the more difficult ones.
The simpler issues are lower the voting age from 21 to 18. Introduce the single-seat, single-vote system for all 3 tiers of elections. abolish appointments to district boards, the urban council, and the regional council. And in what Patton called a gesture of good faith, members of China's parliament would be allowed to run for election in Hong Kong.
一旦英方在双方没有达成协议以前，把他的方案，不管是全部的方案还是部分的方案，提交立法局，这就是表明英方对谈判是毫无诚意，就意味着英方单方面的终止了谈判，就是这样。等等。
China accused the British side of sabotaging the chance of an agreement by changing its position at the last minute.
If anyone's talking about honesty and truth, I would be very, very happy in due course to set out exactly what had happened during these discussions, not just in the 15th and 16th and 17th rounds, but in the previous 14 rounds as well.
把中英谈判的所有的文件记录全部公开，让大家看。
While the finger-pointing continued, the Chinese announced plans to speed up the work of its preliminary working committee. The 57-member body was appointed in March. It was China's so-called second stove to set up the first post-1997 government in case Sino-British cooperation broke down. In December, Beijing declared the death of the through train for all elected bodies, and the PwC was directed to make arrangements for elections in 1997.
不久以前，港英当局公开宣布将把所谓部分政改方案提交立法局讨论。在这种情况下，预委会的工作需要加紧，各位委员肩负的任务也就更重了。
It's in the interest of China, and certainly of Hong Kong, that there should be an agreement, so that in '97 the transfer of sovereignty is a smooth one, and not a rough one which shakes confidence and thus harms China as well as Hong Kong.
During the first part of the year, the Hang Seng Index was a barometer on political development.
I have therefore decided, with the advice of the Executive Council, to gazette the draft legislation this afternoon.
Government representatives of the two countries will, starting from the 22nd of April, hold talks in Beijing.
But by September, overseas investors became major players in the stock market. The index unpegged itself from politics and became more preoccupied with breaking the 10,000 mark. It succeeded on December 10th.
But there was fallout from the political dispute. The Sino-British Joint Liaison Group had made little progress all year. Patton's decision to go it alone made things worse. It was a rift too wide for one Christmas card alone to bridge. A three-day meeting in December produced few results.
I think the Chinese do believe that they can bring pressure to bear on the British government by holding up matters in the Joint Liaison Group.
究竟是谁不按照联合声明的规定来办？究竟是谁不经过双方的磋商合作？究竟是谁单方面的在采取一些行动呢？是中国还是英国？这个大家都很清楚。
Also on hold, the Cheblakok Airport project. A financing arrangement acceptable to both sides remains elusive. Two meetings of the JLG Airport Committee produced no agreement. The building of Hong Kong's 9th container port should have been well underway by now. As yet, this model remains the only tangible part of the project.
In the background, pro-democracy activists continued to demand full democracy for the territory and China. They refused to let Beijing or themselves forget the June 4th crackdown in Tiananmen Square 4 years ago, where students demanding democracy were brutally suppressed.
On the other end of the scale, though, some groups and businesses went all out in their support of Beijing's bid to host the 2000 Olympics.
Jean d'Ève. Art and time, Jean d'Ève.
I work hard all day, so I value the time I spend with my lady and my national twin and float shaver. This razor has titanium-coated, twin floating heads to give me the closeness of a warm, wet shave.
So, who is smoother, me or your shaver?
I'm not sure. Why don't you come a little closer? National shaver, smoother than you ever thought you would be.
E questo dove l'hai preso? Saci. Molto grazioso. Bugiardo, sei andato bene. E questa è la figlia del gondoliere. Me ne vado.
Ma dove vai? Anna, un attimo, aspetta.
Addio.
Buongiorno, signorina. Anna! Mi dai il portafoglio, per piacere?
Sachi, live life with a passion.
Eastern Express, a powerful new voice is about to speak.
It feels perfect, since it is. The all-new Honda Accord. Perfect balance.
This is Mu. It means very small, just like the Olympus Mu1 is small and precise. Zoom indeed means zoom lens. Who can use these zoom cameras? Now we have maybe the world's lightest zoom camera. The 2x zoom makes shooting more comfortable. It has built-in flash and is weatherproof. I have Mu1. I have Mu Zoom. How about you?
Olympus.
Sound and vision beyond imagination. The new Akai X595, certified to ISO 9002. Chernu table wine. Classic style, modern taste.
People as much as events shaped Hong Kong in 1993.
There were familiar names in the news this year, Lu Ping, Michael See and Anson Chan, and there were new ones too, like Han Dongfang.
But no one continued to be in the spotlight or the hot seat more than Governor Chris Patten.
That surprised you?
彭定康先生将来历史上要成为香港的千古罪人。
PRC has other words which have been used about me. Prostitute, serpent, Buddha, tango dancer.
But as the political climate fluctuated, so too did the governor's popularity. When he first arrived, surveys had him enjoying 65% of the community's support. This year, that popularity rate hovered in the 50s. It hit a low of 55% in March after Patten gazetted his full reform package. Whether it was a sign of flagging popularity or simply because the novelty had worn off, the governor's signature town hall meetings after his policy speech this year were not well attended. Politics wasn't Chris Patten's only concern this year.
Stress and the hectic schedule of the job were taking their toll. The governor suffered heart trouble in February and underwent an operation to enlarge 2 arteries that had narrowed.
1993 saw the departure of Sir David Ford, Hong Kong's longest-serving chief secretary. Sir David had been in Hong Kong for 26 years. It was not without sadness that he departed.
We leave Hong Kong in the hands of two great people, the Governor and the Chief Secretary. It's in safe hands, and it'll continue to flourish, and it'll continue to prosper.
Ford will maintain links with the territory by serving as Hong Kong's commissioner in London.
The successor as Chief Secretary and the first local Chief Secretary in Hong Kong is Mrs. Anson Chan.
You will be able to see the softer side of me.
Anson Chan is also the first woman to get the job. The significance of her role in history was not lost on the new Chief Secretary, and at times she had difficulty hiding her glee. First day on the job.
The Thursday calendar looked pretty awful, I can tell you that. And the rest of the week looks equally awful.
The happiness could also be over leaving the post of Secretary for the Civil Service. Chan left behind a controversy over a new policy that allows overseas officers to switch to local terms of employment. Expatriates had threatened to sue the administration, claiming the old localization policy was against the Bill of Rights. But local staff unions slammed the U-turn, saying the new policy blocked their chances for promotion.
Those against, please say no.
In a rare move, LegCo passed a private member's bill to freeze the policy temporarily.
Someone has told me that it seems to be I'm jumping out of a frying pan into the fire, but one shall see.
Constitutional Affairs Secretary Michael See picks up the hot potato when he dons the hat of Civil Service Secretary in the new year. But Michael See is a man used to the heat. Since the governor announced his political package, See has found himself taking up the role of defender of patents reforms. He was party to the lengthy negotiations on electoral arrangements, and in speaking up for the British side, See was scorned by Chinese officials.
代表啊，中英双方谈判的代表啊，各自都只一个，所以这位先生太越位了吧？是不是啊？
There have been questions about Xi's future in the civil service under Chinese rule, but the Constitutional Affairs Secretary maintains he's just doing his job and he intends to stay on after 1997.
我亦都未感覺過憂慮。點解咁講呢？係咪我真係好似有啲報紙寫話，好似清兵咁前後勇字呢？咁我可以肯定同大家講，我唔係英雄。
But other senior officials have opted out of the civil service, partly because they fell out of favor in the Patten administration. John Chan was Secretary for Education and Manpower when he called it quits in June. In pre-Patten days, Chan was almost assured of becoming Hong Kong's first local chief secretary. Instead, in 1993, he found himself taking over the steering wheel of the Kowloon Motorbus Company.
Transport Secretary Yeung Kai-yin also decided to throw in the towel this year to join the private sector. His resignation, he said, was not because he saw diminishing promotion prospects for himself. Yeung said he wanted to make way for younger colleagues.
I reckon that the time has arrived to draw a line across my career in the public service, and I haven't done so lightly. 31 years is a long time. It is a lifetime for most people.
9.5 million sold. Thank you, ladies.
An astounding $9.5 million. That's how much one Hong Kong businessman paid for the number 2 license plate. 2 had in the past been used exclusively by Hong Kong's financial secretary, but it was auctioned off in February to raise money for charity. The sale put pressure on Hong Kong's number 1 cop, Lee Kwan Ha, to give up his coveted number 1 plate. He balked at the idea.
Historically, traditionally, it is synonymous with the force. Anything which will be detrimental to the history, the tradition, and the pride of the force
must be resisted and resisted strongly.
This is ridiculous. I think it's quite ridiculous, really.
What Sir David Akers-Jones finds ridiculous is criticism over his acceptance of an appointment to advise Beijing on Hong Kong affairs. He was chief secretary and acting governor in the 80s. The British media accused him of selling out.
It's 6 years since I left the government. I think that those criticisms come from people who are not really close to the Hong Kong situation, conversant with the Hong Kong situation.
In November, Hong Kong was rocked by the sudden dismissal of top anti-graft officer Alex Choi. He was the Independent Commission Against Corruption's Deputy Director of Operations, the highest-ranking ICAC officer to be dumped so abruptly. The exact reasons for the drastic action are shrouded in secrecy. Alex Choi insinuated his dismissal was connected to a sexual harassment case at the ICAC. He accused his boss of covering up for the expatriate colleague implicated in the investigation.
If I were to remain silent, it would draw suspicion as to my position in this unsolved crime.
Choi took his case to the police, and a criminal investigation is pending. 1993 saw the Legislative Council divided down party lines. Consensus was rare.
But unity came in sadness as councillors closed ranks to mourn the passing of veteran legislator Stephen Chong. He was a performer on and off the political stage. Stephen Chong collapsed after a party one night in May. He had suffered a heart attack. His main artery was totally blocked. Chong died that night in hospital. Stephen Chong had been a legislator for 13 years. The veteran lawmaker represented the industrial sector in LegCo. He was a founding member of the Liberal Party, but never lived to see the launch.
正當香港前途不明朗嘅情況之下，最可惜嘅係佢10年嚟為香港前途努力，而冇機會見到97同埋實行港人治港。
To the many issues, mostly on politics, that Stephen and I totally disagreed on. But who can hate a person who always spoke from the heart?
Stephen Chong Kam Chun was 52 years old.
There was added drama at Chong's funeral involving another legislator. Gilbert Leung fainted from grief and from the stress brought on by problems of his own. Leung was charged with buying votes in the 1991 election. The court found him guilty in June, and he was jailed for 3 years. The 2 vacated seats in LegCo were filled by James Tien and Alfred Cho.
Hong Kong journalist Shi Yang arrested in Beijing for stealing state secrets.
The new year finds Han Dongfan still a drifter with no place to call home. The dissident union leader is stranded in Hong Kong. China accused him of taking part in counter-revolutionary activities abroad. He was refused entry and his passport cancelled.
我现在只是一个人，我现在我仍然我想唯一幸运的是我现在还没有被宣布开除国籍，那么我想我仍然是中国公民。
Through hell and high water, he'll travel the world for love. The Duke in the wildest Wild West show. Circus World, tonight cinema bilingual at 9:30 on Pearl.
对。
Ma cosa? Qui non c'è niente.
Attention! Le mie scarpe Saci.
Fai il bravo! Puoi uscire.
Sachi. Live life with a passion.
The Sharp's second-generation 8-head VCR. With the unique 8-head system for superfine images. And a built-in FM tuner that brings you true-to-life Star TV stereo sound. The VC H100 from Sharp. Sharp idea, sharp product.
If all cars serviced by us over the years were lined up, that line would be longer than the Great Wall. We are Da Chong Hong Motor Service Center Limited, with premises that cover a total of 2 million square feet and a number of joint venture motor service centers in China, providing the highest level of services for vehicles represented by the Da Chong Hong Motor Group. At Da Chong Hong Motor Service Center, you're always first with the best of our service.
From American Express. Membership miles. Every time you spend on the card, you earn points that let you fly for free. The faster you enroll, the faster you start earning points. Fly for free with membership miles, only from American Express.
Eastern Express, a powerful new voice is about to speak.
Try its new personal touch.
The government has published the second review of the 1989 White Paper on Pollution in Hong Kong. It is a green challenge for the community. Copies of the report of the review are available at all district offices. If you have any comment, send it to the Secretary for Planning, Environment and Lands at Murray Building, Garden Road, Hong Kong.
Hong Kong was a relatively safer place to live in 1993.
We all remember the running gun battles on the streets and violent robberies of last year. Well, there were fewer of them this year, and in general, violent crime was down.
But the streets of Hong Kong were not without their more dramatic moments.
Of course, who can forget the image of a masked gunman holding Mongkok at bay with a Chinese-made AK-47?
As the suspects made their getaway in a taxi, they fired at least 8 shots from an AK-47 to keep police away.
We have 8 empty AK-47, we believe, cartridges on the road here and some spent bullets. The shop's been robbed of about 2,000 taels of gold.
Waterloo Road became a battleground as the culprits sped north from Mongkok in a getaway car and a hijacked taxi over the Princess Margaret flyover near Boundary Street. Eyewitnesses said they saw and heard many shots.
Some 60 people were crowded inside the Chow Dai Folk jewelry shop on Hennessy Road when 3 armed men entered with what looked like grenades. Later in the afternoon, police found the car believed to have been used in the getaway. Inside the vehicle was a grenade.
When confronted by police, the criminals opened fire and a hand grenade was detonated. Police responded and 4 police officers opened fire, firing a total of 11 shots.
A member of the public was on the phone to the bank, and sounds of the robbery were heard on the telephone, and the police were alerted immediately.
A police sergeant was hit in the face. One culprit was shot, dying at the scene. Another one was sent to hospital where he was certified dead. They left behind 2 China-made Black Star pistols and a travel bag bursting with cash.
The robbery sparked calls for heavier penalties against ruthless criminals. Much of the weapons used had come from Vietnam via mainland China. Police on both sides of the border had kept up their joint efforts to fight cross-border crime, and in 1993, their successes were showing.
The number of stolen cars dropped dramatically. And not only that, more and more were being returned from the mainland, albeit some looking a bit worse for wear. The cooperative effort culminated in the return of Hong Kong's second most wanted man, the Goosehead. He's facing charges connected with 2 separate robberies.
Cross-border crime may be on the decline, but the fight against triads is still an uphill battle.
Triad activities in the film and entertainment industry were highlighted last year.
Movie stars took to the streets to protest about being blackmailed and coerced into taking movie roles.
And of course, there were the sensationalized gangland slayings.
The problem was not as high profile this year, but it did continue, and it all came to a head in Macau.
In the early hours of November 21st, Hong Kong racing car driver Chan Yu-hing was murdered with 2 bullets to the head. Chan was a reputed triad leader, nicknamed the Tiger of Wan Chai. It's suspected his murder was a revenge killing by other triads. At the funeral in Hong Kong, the police took no chances.
If reporters push and these guys, the mourners, push back, then you're all in breach of the public order and orders. I'll clear the pathway. No pushing, no fighting. You all understand that, everybody?
In the weeks before Chan's death, triads were believed responsible for several firebomb attacks on the homes of entertainment industry personalities. The incidents triggered calls for a crackdown.
I think the government knows perfectly well who the triads are, but they don't seem to make any move towards stopping this triad activity.
But others blamed legislators for not moving fast enough on the organized crime bill, which has been in the works for more than a year. The bill would give the police greater power to deal with triads. It was not just the police who had their hands full dealing with crime this year. The Independent Commission Against Corruption was busy handling a 44% increase in complaints. Reports against civil servants alone were up by 34%. Some of the increase could be a result of a stepped-up publicity campaign against corruption.
The ICAC's battle against corruption has led to many successful prosecutions.
But still, the upward trend prompted the governor to make the fight against corruption one of his government's top 5 priorities in 1994.
A summer on the high seas. It began in June. A ragtag fleet of fishing boats brought Vietnamese settlers from China to Hong Kong shores. Most had come from Beihai, Guangxi province. The Chinese government had torn down their homes and they had the demolition papers to prove it. Hong Kong gave them hope of a life away from China's poverty-stricken resettlement farms. But they were classified as illegal immigrants and placed in camps. By August, their numbers had grown to 2,400.
The only way to stem this influx is to return the ECVIIs to China as soon as possible.
The first batch was sent home in September. They vowed they would return, but so far have stayed away.
The ugly side of human nature turned up at the construction site of a mentally handicapped hostel in Kowloon City. Estate residents came head-to-head with riot police as they tried to put work to a stop. They blasted the government for not telling them about the project beforehand. They said they feared for their safety.
Isn't that ridiculous, don't you think? That people who throw stones are afraid of people who are harmless? Nobody has a right to forbid other people to move into the same territory.
But the protest turned militant. Residents broke windows and plastered threatening messages around the centre. The acts of vandalism prompted talk of an anti-discrimination legislation. The centre opened in November without incident. An uneasy peace between residents and centre occupants is holding.
The union movement flexed its muscles early in the year. More than 3/4 of Cathay Pacific's 4,000 flight attendants walked off the job just before Chinese New Year, the airline's busiest season. Hong Kong's flag carrier ground to a halt. Travel plans for thousands of travelers were thrown into disarray. People found themselves waiting for days to get a flight out. Many were not pleased.
Lunar New Year's Eve, the dispute turned bitter as management threatened disciplinary action for those who did not go back to work. The strikers turned to the governor. Chris Patton left for a holiday without intervening. But the dispute continued until a LegCo resolution allowed the strikers a graceful retreat.
Very urgent responsibility of trade unions to have full support behind FAU, because what they are now struggling for is the right of workers to collective action, which is essential to the protection of workers' interests.
Midnight Run, Saturday Studio 930 on Pearl.
Cindy is a caring, considerate daughter-in-law. Today, she bought a new National rice cooker with advanced functions, but not everyone was pleased.
Ma, it cooks soft and fluffy rice every time. But my 20-year-old National still steams to perfection.
Mom! We're back in Hong Kong to stay. Think of all the meals we share together.
Guess we need 2 National rice cookers after all.
National, touching your life every day.
Jean d'Oeuvre. Art and time. Jean d'Oeuvre. Sound and vision beyond imagination. The new Akai X595, certified to ISO 9002.
An ultralight and ultra-compact camera with 38 to 110mm zoom lens, and is weatherproof. Olympus Super Zoom 110.
Olympus.
The camera you can take with wherever you go. Point and shoot in style, Olympus Mu One, the ultra-compact auto 35mm camera.
Olympus.
It feels perfect, since it is. The all-new Honda Accord. Perfect balance.
We went out to test the revolutionary Braun Flex Control shaver.
Good morning, sir. Have you had a shave this morning?
I have.
Great. We've got here the new Braun Flex Control shaver. Would you care to try it?
I would like to, yes. Yeah, it seems as though it's picking up something.
The unique pivoting head follows the contours of your face for an incredibly close shave.
The swivel head gives it some sort of added movement because it certainly seems to be doing more than my one at home does.
See what your shaver missed this morning.
It picked up something. Are they selling these yet?
The world's first pivoting head twin foil shaver from Braun.
The Building Management Ordinance is now in effect. It applies to both flat owners and building management agencies and specifies that flat owners have a right to incorporate. There are also specific mandatory provisions to regulate various building management matters. For further details, please get an information pamphlet from the district offices.
Mother Nature was not really very kind to Hong Kong this year.
No, she wasn't, John. A number of typhoons swept by the territory. None struck directly, but the bad weather they brought on wreaked havoc.
We saw the worst flooding in more than 4 decades, but that wasn't all.
It was not the best of days for flying. The number 3 typhoon signal was up. Several flights gave up on the approach to Kai Tak Airport. It was under those conditions that China Airlines Flight 605 came in for the touchdown. It landed, but by the time the Boeing 747 came to a stop, it was in the harbor. There were 296 people on board. Airport emergency response units rushed to get them out. Miraculously, no one was killed. 23 people were sent to hospital, but there were no serious injuries.
I'm scared already, not you.
What was it like in the plane at the time?
Well, like when you drop the egg from your hand to the floor.
The pilot blamed the accident on crosswinds that had whipped up on the landing.
We did everything is right. And finally, evacuation, we did very good, very safe.
What went wrong won't be known until an investigation is completed. In the meantime, airport authorities had to worry about getting the 240-ton jumbo jet out of the water. At midnight of the 3rd night, it took another week before the plane was lifted out of the water with the help of 2 barges and the biggest crane in Hong Kong.
The typhoon season left its legacy in other ways. Villagers in the northern New Territories will never forget the night they had to escape from their own homes. It was September 17th. Typhoon Dot had dumped hundreds of millimeters of rain onto the territory, creating the worst flooding in 40 years. The police special duties unit was called in to help in the rescue. But for many residents, help was late in coming.
Firemen were not familiar with the layout of remote villages and had to rely on other residents to get them to trouble spots. For some, it was morning before help arrived. There were criticisms about the ineffective rescue operation. The government said it's never been put to such a test.
Across the border in Shenzhen, the flooding was even worse. The city was inundated. conventional modes of transport came to a halt. Imagination took over.
Power supply was knocked out at the train station. That meant no lights, no air conditioning, and no computers. Immigration officers were forced to process travelers by candlelight. The havoc was wreaked by the Shenzhen River bursting its banks. There are plans to improve drainage, but work won't be completed until 1997. Until then, floods will continue to be a threat.
It didn't take long for it to happen again. More rain was dumped onto the territory with the passage of Tropical Storm Ira. This time, Tuen Mun was hardest hit. The water pumping station flooded. The pumps broke down. 400,000 residents were left without water. The irony wasn't lost on residents. So much rain had fallen, and yet they were forced to line up in the street with buckets.
The government was blamed for not providing adequate drainage to meet the demands of growing developments. The government hit back and blamed inconsiderate landowners for turning farmland into container storage lots, in the process blocking natural drainage with cement. The authorities have since announced they will step up prosecution on illegal land use.
But nothing except rain was to blame for the catastrophe on Lantau Island. Roads turned into rivers of mud. Landslides closed the island's main road. It took days before life resumed normal.
In June, yet another typhoon shut down the Kwai Chung container terminal. When it reopened, more than 1,000 container trucks descended onto the port, jamming up major thoroughfares, paralyzing traffic in the district for hours.
It was one of Hong Kong's worst industrial accidents. 12 workers were killed when the construction lift they were in plunged from the 20th floor. The lift was overloaded. A warning device should have prevented that from happening. No one knows what went wrong. A 16-year-old boy on a summer job was among those who died. The governor was appalled at what happened.
We can't build Hong Kong on fatalities and industrial accidents. We've got to be more careful.
The tragedy prompted a stepped-up inspection campaign to ensure the safety of lifts. The governor also promised legislation to better guarantee safety at construction sites.
Danger lurked this summer in the waters of popular Hong Kong beaches. Man-eating sharks were preying on unsuspecting swimmers. Two people were killed. "30 beaches were closed down.
Red flag and shark warning flags are being hoisted at this beach. Please do not go into water."
The daring tried to tempt fate. Shark hunting fever gripped the territory. But the predators were not to be hunted.
It wasn't all bad news in 1993. Hong Kong registered a revenue surplus of $22 billion.
The elderly will have more to look forward to in retirement. The government announced plans this year to set up a compulsory old age pension scheme. Details have yet to be worked out, and the debate is just beginning. It's not a central provident fund as demanded by the community, but it's still a start.
The dream of owning a home is no longer impossible for middle-income earners, even with skyrocketing property prices. The government has undertaken to build subsidized housing for the sandwich class. The first flats will be completed in 1995.
Throughout 1993, the people of Hong Kong have shown their resilience at adapting to change, uncertainty, and adverse conditions.
As we look forward to a brighter and more certain future in 1994, we'll leave you tonight with some of the sights and sounds that demonstrate Hong Kong's ability to cope.
And how it's able to make the best of a bad situation.
Good night.
And Happy New Year.
Hong Kong Review 93 was co-sponsored by National Panasonic.
由黃慶洲報道。
九龍西總區副指揮官黃梁錦山話，警方嚴禁市民使用噴霧劑，警員會先採取勸喻方式，如果市民唔理警告，就會被拘捕。
噴霧劑又會引起咧推拱啦，又會令到咧嗰個地面咧就濕滑，好容易咧就會跌倒，咁啊會引起傷亡。咁我哋係唔希望有發生。
佢強調喺聖誕期間已經有22個市民因為使用噴霧劑而被控行為不檢。對於警方嘅做法，市民有唔同嘅意見。
咁但係如果你整唔到人，咁你唔俾佢玩，又即係冇乜意思咯。
我覺得應該禁咗呢啲嘢，唔好俾佢出街買咯，因為噴落隻眼度會有受到傷害啊嘛，啱唔啱先啦？
雖然市民唔準用噴霧劑，不過喺尖東好多鋪頭都有噴霧劑出售。有啲店鋪東主話，顧客主要係嚟自附近嘅寫字樓。
我哋寫字樓客買嘅，即係俾自己公司用嚟開 party 用嘅啫。我諗應該唔會喺街壞啩。
無線電視記者黃慶洲報道。
再過多半個鐘頭左右咧，就踏入1994年啦。喺維園呢一度咧，亦都係會有倒數，並且係會用到激光㗎。咁相信會係今晚成晚嘅高潮。之後咧仲會有表演，大約係直至到1點半左右咧先至係結束㗎。我喺呢一度嘅報導告一段落，交翻俾新聞部嘅周浩輝。
唔該晒。咁今晚亦都係蘭桂坊事件嘅1週年。咁嗰度嘅酒吧老闆話，經過教訓之後，啲人已經係唔敢飲酒嚟到鬧事㗎。吳曉東報導。
蘭桂坊事件1週年，目睹事件嘅人話：呢1年嚟，當再次踏足蘭桂坊嘅時候，心情同以前好唔同。
都唔好喺嗰度搞事啊，或者推嗰啲人啊咁樣，製造啲混亂出嚟咯。
呢一位酒吧嘅經理1年前亦都係目睹慘劇發生。佢話事件係令到嚟飲酒嘅同賣酒嘅都得到一個好大嘅教訓。蘭桂坊比以前靜咗，亦都安全咗。
嗰陣時蘭桂坊就冇咁緊飲酒，開心啊，癲得咁樣，但係而家就唔會咯，全部都係control晒咯。
雖然蘭桂坊大部分嘅酒吧呢1年嚟嘅生意都唔夠以前嘅一半，咁但係喺大除夕，佢哋已經係打算要安全第一，生意第二。根據外國嘅研究，曾經喺節日受心理創傷嘅人有接近20%可能會喺週年紀念日當中再次係受到心理困擾。香港心理學會係設立咗呢一條熱線，輔導再次受到蘭桂坊事件困擾嘅人士。無線電視記者吳曉東報導。
威爾斯親王醫院再發現有病人因為戴隱形眼鏡而導致變形蟲入眼，係3個星期以嚟嘅第2宗。陳佩琳報導。
第2個患上角膜潰瘍嘅女病人，佩戴隱形眼鏡9個月之後就發覺眼睛劇痛同視覺模糊。主診醫生林順潮話：變形蟲係藉住細菌繁殖，如果唔適當咁護理同佩戴隱形眼鏡，就會助長變形蟲喺眼角膜裏邊滋生。
你隻眼嗰個抵抗能力差，
點樣之下會差咧？譬如話你嗰個隱形眼鏡本身係用得耐，個邊嗰度披咗口啊，或者係配得唔好，刮損咗個眼睛。咁啊，眼球表面尤其是個角膜損咗呢，個抵抗力咪會差咗咯。或者你自己本身係戴得過時啊，即係譬如應該預你8個鐘頭，你係戴到12個鐘頭。
林醫生話：只要根據驗光師嘅指示，適當咁清潔同佩戴隱形眼鏡，係可以預防患上角膜潰瘍。而中大醫學院就呼籲市民唔好